Civil War. Draconum follows Pluo a bit, detecting a shortcut by the way of moonlight. She notices her mother and Shinlin seem to stay close together, so she does the same, for some ways. Choosing a tree, she quietly climbs it for an aerial view of the surroundings. She knows her mother by the honeysuckles and watches her. She spies a group of 8 Nettinjar walking right past her mother. Draconum's first inclination is to make noise to distract them, but she remains an invisible observer. Unaware of her presence, the predators lurk out into the open space and approach to Cheo's house. Sourly, she thinks of all their hard work and investment in that place, now just a waste. One Nettinjar enters the opening of the house and looks around as the others snarl with readied spears and vicious hooks. The house shifts in a low creaking incipient of the last invader enters. By and by, the opening decreases until it's imperceptible, with some of the branches receding into the ground, twisting and curling around each other as it does. Clashes, hollering, and shrieks can be heard just a few yards from the house. Draconum trusts it's the troops' foray. Army or Yo she cannot discern at this position. She begins chanting. Latulut, Latulut, Farid Fam Ma'azotia. She forms 2 giant bubbles of light. She pushes one over the house and the other towards the noise. The light immediately attracts the attention of a few Nettinjars, who throw spears at it, detesting the mystifying globe, not knowing what it is. Still perching in the tree, Draconum hears the ground crunch below. Her heart pounds as she watches the Nettinjar hunting. They must be aware that the origin was in this vicinity, the origin of the globe. One of the Nettinjar turns its head sharply and stares intently at her mother. Panic torrents through Draconum's blood. Abruptly, 2 branches thrust out from the tree, punching the Nettinjar's ears. Relief settles over her, and she smiles, exhaling. Some of the Nettinjars cry out from the center of the clearing as arrows strike them. Whirling around, the injured Nettinjars forfeit the location and hobble back to the forest for cover. A few seconds later, Draconum hears a desperate, terrified voice, much like her mother's. The squeal gashes through her chest. Her eyes bulge. She scans the area intently. Blood turns from her face and peers momentarily at the builder who she previously thought was her mother. Who? No! She thinks herself a fool. Mother! Draconum cries out, sliding out of the tree in a wild dread as if caught on fire. Bushes seem to uproot and run in pursuit of the screaming as she does. But she doesn't care. Nothing else matters. She runs towards the sound as quickly as she can, hurtle herself into a group of soldiers advancing. Draconum rams into them, wedging and squeezing her way between. Her mind is a swivet, seeing a standoff, Nettinjars and Höfjars. It's unfathomable to her. She's momentarily stunned, her mind not wanting to accept what her eyes see. Her heart is pounding too loudly for her to hear clearly, but one of them holds the head of a dark-haired female elf with her mouth pried open. The filthy, elfish creature holds a hook that drips with rich crimson liquid. Nausea nearly overwhelms Draconum. Her mother's eyes are wide in horror. It is her loving mother, the pride of Höfjar, down on her knees, with the blood spilling down her chin and onto some of her honeysuckles. Her face twists and pleads as tears fall. Her lovely round chocolate eyes now swell and protrude. Her skin is blanched, and she hunches over, suddenly immobile. The sight causes a wrenching pain within Draconum's every aspect. "Beloved sister!" Zumar shrieks out, and then wails long and piercing, extending throughout the forest. She too is adorned in honeysuckles. "Give the dragon!" another Nedenjar insists. He shows another hostage, holding the gruesome hook to the elf's face. Draconum staggers with trembling hands, but she cannot allow this horror show to continue. She is numb, but then a seething surge rises within. Her strong resolve surfaces. "Let them go now!" she demands, scarcely able to contain her stance. Tremors threaten her. "That is the one of the Nedenjars hisses. Her mother's head rises slightly. Her begging eyes lock into Draconum's. Another Nedenjar, holding a hostage, holds the elf's head up and begins to pry its mouth open. This is beyond tolerable. No more will suffer. Quickly, Draconum unleashes her dragon roar. The loud, thunderous sound springs forth with ferocity. Some of the Nedenjars are thrown into the trees. They lessen their grips on their weapons and hostages. All, though, are stunned and forced back, both hostages and foes alike. And then the light vanishes. Darkness drapes over the gore. It hides the agitation and fear, but it lends to the hysteria felt in the air. Draconum is deaf to the shrieks and screams. Through it all, she never takes her eyes off the Nedenjar who is holding her mother. In the moonlight, the accursed brute regains its footage and retrieves her mother. It throws her over its back as if an overlarge sack of potatoes. The Höfjarians waste no time darting in and taking inroads upon the fallen Nedenjar. It is mayhem. Elves swing their swords and shoot their arrows. It is dreamlike, a nightmare of the worst kind. Draconum is sprinting past elves, Nedenjar, wolves, cats, and chassis. She feels something tug at her dress. She swats it absently with her staff. She staggers a bit, then her garment tears. She continuously regains her gait rapidly. The Nedenjar jumps in front of her. Its barbed hook grips her loose garment, cutting her flesh on her arm. She raises her staff to counterattack, but some vines wrap around the Nedenjar's neck, and arrows suddenly burst forth from its chest. Thankful, Draconum looks out into the forest, only to realize that she lost sight of the creature who was holding her mother. She strains her eyes, but can no longer see or hear any fleeing, any rustling of leaves or crunching of any sort in that direction. Hopelessness slows her run. She regresses to a fast walk. Aimlessly she moves, hearing pursuers from behind, not knowing or caring who or what they are. "Help me!" she cries, rendering her panic deep into the darkened woods. An owl promptly flies in front, fluttering for a moment before eye level and hooting as it goes along. Draconum follows it. "I'm coming, Mother! Please be alive!" she shouts into the night. She is keeping pace with the owl, but so are the footfalls behind her. She doesn't dare look back, fearful that doing so would slow her pace. Ahead of her, she begins to hear sounds of a struggle, hissing and growling, echoing through the trees as the palely lit by the sun's grace. Quickly she shouts, "Lurk!" without stopping, and flings a light bubble in the direction of the sound. The Nedenjars hiss, growling louder, and Draconum can now see all the squinting and scowling at her light. On the ground is a mass of vines and honeysuckles. She assumes is her mother. And Ian is engaged with a few netting jars. A chassa is helping blocking what seems to be an opening, like a black mouth, forbidding, sinking into the earth. She considers it perhaps a tunnel or covert. A panther is in desperate, vicious battle with 4 netting jars that are trying to remove the chassa. She points her staff at the netting jar nearest to the honeysuckles, at least alleviating the sentries of one of their nemesis. "Now you will be my hostage," she proclaims, wrathful. "Is kata is mana, kog kala ingor mano." Icy snow emerges from the tip of her staff and sprays over the disoriented netting jar as Draconum continues to walk forward, forcing on the light and the spray simultaneously. More netting jar try to lunge at her with their jagged hooks. Suddenly, the pursuers that she had been hearing behind her spring forth with vicious attacks towards the netting jars. Soldiers, friends, and family are in struggle with the cruel netting jar. Her brief glance away is an opportunity for her intended hostage. It strikes at her, lunging its jagged hook into her breastplate. She moves with him in a thrusting pull dance. Both her hands grip tightly on her staff, keeping the icy flow fixed on him as he yanks and shoves. She tries to kick him and make him let go, but his grip is firm. Maintaining her concentration grows harder and harder, but the netting jar is entirely white-coated with soft ice crystals. He crumples to the ground, pulling her down with him, clinging to his hook. The ice becomes firm, stilling him, with his wide eyes looking out at her from the thick layers. Relieved, she drops the staff and pries his sinister hook from her protection plate. She immediately flings herself to her motionless mother, the once proud elf, pale and fragile. Tears flow, seeing the vacancy in her eyes. She wails out, "Mom! Mom! Please, Mom!" All around, Draconum is oblivious to the netting jar being fought off by the elves. Well, I hope you enjoyed that bit. I misspoke. I read it as graced by the sun's light. There's no sun. It's in the middle of the night. It's graced by the moon's light. That's what it says in the text. That's what I intended. There's a lot about the mom. You're probably wondering, why is it called Civil War? That's a good question. Okay, so remember, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and until next time,